Help fight Islamic terrorism. Visit www.americansagainst.hate.org.
Dignitaries, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the Florida Counter-Terrorism Conference for 2010.
The Tampa case involving Sami al-Aryan really started well before 1994, but from a criminal perspective, it did start in November of 1994, after literally I viewed Steve Emerson's production of Jihad in America that was aired in November of '94 on PBS. And a substantial part of that production involved Sami al-Aryan and his connection to the Palestinian and Islamic Jihad, or PIJ. So as a result of viewing that, literally I ran some immigration record checks on al-Aryan and determined that he had an immigration status. He had a green card here in the United States, and he had actually applied for U.S. citizenship status, naturalized U.S. citizenship status, and that was pending in Tampa. So I had his immigration file sent from our Tampa office over to my office here in Miami at the time, and I reviewed the file, and lo and behold, I found on a certain section of that naturalization application that he had apparently lied on a certain section, that he had left off his involvement in certain organizations that he belonged to, and I'm not talking about the PIJ, although the Palestinian and Islamic Jihad, which of course he did leave that off. The terrorist doesn't put on their immigration forms that they're a terrorist, not usually anyway, but there were other organizations that he had left off. So initially, right off the bat, there at the end of 1994, we determined, well, we've got a viable potential fraud case on this guy, and that's what started that whole investigation, an immigration criminal fraud case.
Thank you. Daniel Tuly Wultz, my beloved son, and Andy Cates never knew each other. Both Daniel and Andy were good American citizens. Daniel lived in Weston, Florida, and Andy lived about 1,280 miles away in New York. Daniel was a high school student at the David Posnack Hebrew Day School here in Florida, and Andy worked for Cantor Fitzgerald on the top floor of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Daniel visited Israel many, many times. Andy never did. On September 11, 2001, Andy went to work as he always did. And Muslim suicide bombers flew a civilian jet into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, killing about 3,000 innocent people, including Andy Cates. 5 years later, 5,600 miles away, on our family trip to Israel, April 17, 2006, Daniel and I decided to go and have lunch at a shawarma place in Tel Aviv. As we sat down, a young teenager guy wearing black t-shirt and a dark jeans pants came and stood behind Daniel and was stopped by the security guard of the restaurant. He was asked, what does he want? Not knowing that he was actually a Palestinian. and he just showed he wants to eat. So the guard, as he did to everybody else, he asked him to open his very heavy backpack, which I noticed. And as soon as the guard requested him to open the backpack, he had an evil smile on his face. At that moment, I realized what's happening. I tried to stand up, but it was too late. He detonated 40 pounds of explosives right behind Daniel's back.
My first son was born in 1989 in New York, and I used to take him. We had an apartment downtown next to the Twin Tower. I used to take him every day to the firefighters that will play with him and put him in the big truck, and a good time. My husband was going to the mosque. He was most of the time going to that mosque in New Jersey, where I had the pleasure to make an old guy, a sheep, that was supposed to be the blind, but as he was walking along in that mosque, he does not like it. It was very blind to me. Everything was peaceful. 1992, we decided to move to Memphis to change hospital, and my second son that is here was born. 1993, that's when things started getting bad. We got a letter from his brother. He had a brother that was in Canada on a supposedly religious visa. The letter was not very nice, and when my husband opened that letter written in Arabic, usually I did not pay any attention to anything that was written in Arabic, but I noticed that letter make his face change. And he said to me, he said, I have to leave right away. I have to go meet my brother in Canada. He's going to jihad. I said, jihad? What is jihad? He said, jihad is to give your life for Islam.
You know, I almost think that Joyce Kaufman put me up to this, because I was about to reveal a big secret in the fall. I have a new book coming out called America's Nazi Secret. And among other things, the book is going to talk about the Muslim Brotherhood, and about Mr. Welch's target, Sami al-Arian, and about the men who were your son. And the big secret is this. I was a Justice Department senior prosecutor, worked at the headquarters, and I had access to our Nazi files. And during the Cold War, the British Secret Service talked us into recruiting all of the Eastern European Nazi groups so we could use them as an underground army to fight the Eastern European communists. Well, that's what I told 60 Minutes, that's what I testified about in Congress. What you didn't know was what I'd been told not to say. There was an executive session of Congress where I was supposed to be able to reveal all the secrets I read. That was never held. And I was threatened with prosecution and disbarment if I went public. 30 years have expired, it's now free, it's all going to come out. The Muslim Brotherhood was the Arab Nazi movement. The Palestinian branch was headed, for example, by the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. Later on it split into two factions known as Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, but they're all branches of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood, the original Nazi terrorist group, worked before World War II, all through it, worked for the British Secret Service to crush the infant state of Israel, then was hidden in Saudi Arabia. See, for many years we had two spy agencies in America. One run by Allen Dulles, who believed that President Dewey was going to defeat President Truman in 1948. And so Allen Dulles, and no offense, the Republicans, recruited the Muslim Brotherhood in 1948 as a proxy army to fight communists.
Help fight Islamic terrorism. Visit www.americansagainst.hate.org.